just that sudden loss, there's so many questions. I imagine it would be like anyone who lost somebody and not sure exactly what happened. You have a lot of stories in your head about, she was found sleeping. So it wasn't like she was trying to escape. So we assume she passed away before, like through smoke inhalation and things like that. And yeah, it was you're just in shock. And I felt like I was in shock for a long time. And there's so much you need to do when you have like a house fire alone. And then there's so much to do when someone passes away. The complexity of that was really something else.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Hermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. Today's guest is my friend and colleague, Cate Baio. Cate is a PCC ICF certified coach, a deep transformational coach, the director of learning here at the center, and one of our incredible learning leaders as well, who brings a rare blend of heart, presence, and grounded wisdom to her work. Cate is incredible. She's truly a soulful woman whose presence is palpable. She has this quiet wisdom and deep reverence for the human experience that you'll hear in this episode. And really only someone who's experienced extreme shadows and extreme difficulty can really appreciate the lightness, the heart at the core of the human experience. And that's what you'll find in listening to Cate today. So in today's episode, we talk about the house fire that changed everything for her, the complex legacy of her mother's life and death, her own journey into motherhood and purpose, and how deep coaching became both a calling and a path home. There is a lot of deep wisdom in this episode. Let's dive in. All righty, Cate. Well, I'm so happy to be here with you. And typically at the top of these episodes, I tend to ask the question, who was Cate, or who was the person prior to the onset of your transformational journey? But with your story in particular, it seems like there were many moments. It wasn't sort of this one grand moment. And the first moment being when you were a child, sitting in church and starting to see incongruencies in how those around you were showing up in the things that you were observing. Can you share some context there as far as how old you were and what was happening inside of you then?
Yeah. So my earliest memory was I was raised Catholic. And so one of these churches that we go to was quite big. And so I still remember like kind of looking up on the wall and seeing this like huge, probably life-size kind of sculpture of Jesus on the cross. And I remember just like taking that in and being so like disturbed by it, really. Like it's a very graphic image for a child to be taking in. And so that just really stuck with me. And then also just hearing stories. So then you're sitting and you're hearing stories, and the story of Jesus in the temple and getting very angry with the merchants and the selling of their wares and the basically the capitalistic nature that he was noticing. And I just that alone just kind of like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Like, there's such opulence in the church, and there's such, thinking of the Roman Catholic Church in general, probably being one of the wealthiest corporations on the planet. And I just like, I don't get this. And so that was, kind of moving on I was a little older kind of with that kind of realization. And then as I became a teenager, just being very confused by why women weren't priests, that women had a very specific and diminished role in the Catholic Church. And that I, what I understood of stories in the New Testament, that Jesus's love was uh, unconditional, was all encompassing. And yet there's people who are being told they were bad by their inherent nature of their being. And I was just like, to be clear, like that queer folks were just not, it was not okay that they were going to go to hell. Like, and I just was so confused by that. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And so that was kind of like the first, I would say, questioning around what does it mean? What is God?
Mm.
And what does it mean to live a spiritual life? And what does love mean? And what does love look like? And so that was like kind of my initiation, I feel, into like where we are today.
Mm. It, how would you, or what would you say influenced that deeper longing into something spiritual? Because when you're a kid, and especially I also grew up in the Catholic Church, spirituality and religion are intermingled. They're mixed. They're the same.
Mm.
So at what point did you sort of see or know that it was okay to begin exploring spirituality beyond the church in terms of were there other resources? Were you exposed to other people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I would say this started with my confirmation. So that rite of passage as a teenager, becoming an adult in the church. There was like I had images of myself like riding my bike and going for bike rides. I went for a lot of bike rides, and I found in those moments like that's when I maybe had those first experiences of something bigger that was just unrelated to any of that. And um I wouldn't say there were any particular people. Actually, now that I say that, there was one particular priest that taught me in high school, and his approach was we had a. It's so funny that this is coming up, but we had this class called Peace and Politics. That's what he called it, and so he really taught us to have this critical lens. So he would have us do things like watch the same news story from different news channels and see how things were, the perspective that different. And so he played a big role um in me seeing things in a bigger way and having like not only that critical lens, but also like being able to see spirit in that bigger way as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In your early 20s, so shortly after, you mentioned that your mom had a suicide attempt.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit about what was happening then and how that impacted the way that you viewed your life and the world?
Yeah. So I was in probably my second or probably my third year university. And we received a phone call from a friend of my mom's that she had a suicide attempt. And so my my brother was I have one brother, and so we kind of gathered around her at that time. And I had a I was I was in a drama program, and one of my professors um, had again a really deep impact on me. And so I met with her because she had quite a high standard with our engagement and participation in class. And so I had to meet with her to let her know that I had to go home. And the way she held space for me, and the way I don't even remember what she said, Jonathan, but I do remember this feeling that um, this is going to be hard. And I have a choice in um, how I show up, and understanding and starting to explore what is mine and what is not mine. So I felt like I was able to be in that situation with her and be with her and hold space for her in such a very dark time in her life, and begin to see that, um, like, I am not that. Like, this doesn't define me, that she is having a really difficult experience, and watching other people too. So being able to start to bear witness into seeing how other people reacted to what was happening in her life at that time. And yeah, so I there was something I was able to step into, in it was a real welcome to surrender, um and self-reflection. Like, I remember working with a therapist around that time when we started exploring that idea of a coat that we wear, like, that we're kind of born with this coat that is made from generations before us. And we have a choice as to what we do with that coat. And we can continue to wear that coat, or we can kind of start to explore, like, what it, what am I wearing? And what do I want to kind of take off and put down?
Mm.
And so I had this really clear kind of visualization of this like patchwork coat of like different things that I have inherited into this life. And that underneath it all, like, I am not the coat.
There's a thread with both of these moments in your life, you as a young girl in church and you dealing with the aftermath of your mom's suicide attempt. There, there's an incredible wisdom that you had
Mm,
inherently in you that is quite rare for a young person to have.
mm.
What do you think it is or was or has been about you and your nature that has allowed for that deeper insight in these moments?
I don't really know. I don't really know. And I like, part of my healing journey has been um, seeking support and wisdom from all sorts of different places. And so you asked the question, and I'm smiling because I I I've done some Akashic record work, and so I have been told that I've been around many lifetimes, and many lifetimes on this planet and other planets, and like, I don't even know what to make of that.
Yeah.
I th- I think it's kind of fun to contemplate. And like, I'm not attached to that notion. Um, I always just thought that ev- maybe everybody thought that way. And I think that's why maybe it was so confusing. Like, things make sense. Like, things made sense to me that way. And I didn't understand why it didn't make sense to other people in that way. So yeah, I don't know, Jonathan. Like, yeah.
Hmm. What would you say your biggest struggles were that were personal to you? You had these big moments in life. You're dealing with complexity in your family, how in your home, with your mom. You're in this process of discerning what is mine, what is not mine. I guess what was yours that you were also contending with at that moment?
Yeah, gosh, good question. So what was mine was like the like shame and blame that I carried for other people causing this. Um my mother was a survivor of sexual abuse in her family, and um so there was a lot of uh, of blame and, um, yeah, that was definitely mine. And plus, you just layer on all the socialization of what it is means to be a woman in this world. And there was a lot of complexity I had around that, around my body and self-image. And, you know, there was a lot that, obviously intersected with those experiences.
Mm,
And, um, and so there was a lot of my own work there to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this idea of, we're all souls having a human experience. It's extra clear in your example of you being this soul having this very human experience.
Mm.
And I say that also because people did see you when you were younger, saw that essence that you are and were, especially this professor that you were mentioning. I'm wondering if it's the same one that mentioned that you have the most beautiful soul I have ever seen.
Mm. It is the same. Yeah. Her name's Anne Hardcastle, just to give her some, um, yeah, some love. So she was a really incredible human being. And, yeah, she said that to me at one point. I really appreciated her approach. And so I had more than one course. Like, I kind of followed her into my kind of third or fourth year. I can't remember, but, um, she said that to me and it really kind of took my breath away. And I remember going back to my house and, I drew that up on a piece of paper and kind of hung it up somewhere where I could see it every day. And there were these kind of this moment of, it was like recognition. When somebody like really sees you, like the core of your being, when someone sees that, there's something that it's like, okay, like I think especially at that age, like I'm not making this up. Like there is, like I'm worthy. I am loved. Like I wasn't making all of that up. Like maybe there is something here that, and I was thinking about our talk here today too, because I also feel like been very much socialized to not recognize my strengths and not recognize, um either, like you use the word wisdom, like to as been so socialized to, like, I have to dim my light for others. And that, like, as a woman, my light just doesn't really shine as bright. Like, so, when you have these moments, it was just like, okay, maybe there's something here I should start paying attention to.
And in what ways did you begin paying attention to it?
Um, to be honest with you, at that age, I don't think I did much, like other than have this thing that, was a reminder. I That's when I kind of started expanding my life. Like I moved across the country. I started to kind of build my own life separate from my family system. Um, and nature became a huge, part of my life at that time as well. So just being in nature. I didn't really have many spiritual practices at that time, but I was very much in, like, we talk about these stages of power, and I was very much in a stage of power by reflection and spending a lot of time. I was already buying a lot of self help books and, you know, doing a lot of that. So, yeah.
Which one had the biggest impact on you in the early years?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I need to look at my bookshelf. Um, the seed of the soul, I'm looking at the seed of the soul right now. That's been on my bookshelf a long time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's one that you picked up in your 20s.
I think so. I'd have to go look and see what it was written. Please confirm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then in that same decade, your mom passed away in a house fire.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So it was May 10th, 2002. And I was living here and woke up to a beautiful day and a horrible phone call. And it was a really complicated, I mean, house fires and death in house fires, it's so complicated. And because usually when we lose a loved one, like we have their stuff and there's an attachment we have to the memories of folks in through images and pictures and um whatever, right? And so to not have that and yeah, and then just that sudden loss, there's so many questions. Like when we like, and I imagine it would be like anyone who lost somebody and not sure exactly what happened. You know, you have a lot of stories in your head about, she was found sleeping, so it wasn't like she was trying to escape.
Mm.
So we assume she passed away um before, like through smoke inhalation and things like that. And um yeah, it was a very, you're just in shock. And I felt like I was in shock for a long time. And there's so much you need to do when you have like a house fire alone. And then there's so much to do when someone passes away. It would, the complexity of that was really something else.
Mm.
Um, there was like a I'd say a miracle or a gift that she did give us in that. And it's really bizarre because my mom always had this fear of fire, always this big fear of fire. And so she would always keep family photos. She would keep, I don't know, back in the day, I don't know if you did this, but there was like, she took a lot of pictures on slides and had them printed to slides. And then she had photographs. And so she'd keep photographs by one door, like the front door, and then the slides by the back door. So if there was a fire, there was something by a door that we could grab on the way out. Like they were very important to her. And our cousins at one point rummaged through the home, through my mom's home, and found her photographs, and they were soaking wet and her slides. Um and so they called us to an aunt's and uncle's home, and they had them just laid out everywhere, drying. It was an incredible moment um, to have that. And yeah, and it always makes me wonder, like, what did she know? Like, she was a bit of an intuitive herself, and always made me wonder what did she know? And probably not consciously, but there was something there. And so she gave us that gift. And yeah, and so just the complexity of the grief of that and the years that kind of continued. And as I've grown and as I've processed this, um, you, yeah, it just again was like this crash course in letting go, right? And letting go of the attachment to, as much as it was wonderful to have these photographs, like there was this the attachment to that had already passed. Like there was like, okay, like we've got what we've got,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What most helped you through that grieving process and get to that place of non-attachment?
Friends, family, connection, like human connection. Um, Counseling. I Yeah, there was a long period where I'd have really wild dreams, so having time to process that. Um, I wasn't as resourced as I am now. So, um, as much as I would like to say like prayer or a spiritual practice, um, I didn't tap into those things like I do now.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yet you still had outlets to help you move through the grief.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. And the powerful part of community and grief. And there was an isolating part of that too, because I found that when I told people how my mother died, like if they found out like my mother had passed and they say, "Oh, how did she pass away?" Because people assume cancer or, um, and I would say she had a fire in her home and she passed away. Like it was shocking for people. And I found I had to tend to them.
Mm.
Like it would be, it was very hard. And I was always, yeah. So then I would find that I would kind of begin to isolate. So the people that knew me and the people that knew my story were really important because it became like not, I guess, not safe, or it, it, I was shown that it wasn't really okay to talk about.
Yeah. 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 It wasn't safe for you. It would consume you in some regard because you had to hold space and therefore you held back.
Yeah.
So then you became a mom a year later. Tell me.
Right. So I think I used the word crash course earlier.
Right.
So yeah, the universe wasn't kidding around. Like
No.
it's like, okay, so let's now put you in a place where all of that intergenerational stuff like has even more space to come up. And um yeah, and so it was my pregnancy was easy, but my postpartum was really tough. I had a really tough time postpartum with my first child. And we were living in a place away from our family. We had to lean into community resources, which we did, which was amazing to kind of get us through that period of our life. And yeah, and so from that day forward, that my eldest is now in his 20s, like it's been a constant reflection of my own work and those pieces in me that are still um, ready for healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This may not be a linear question to answer, but when did your spiritual practices and the earnest journey to heal in a way that you were really seeking out resources? Because I guess you had therapy before, so that was certainly a part of your healing journey.
Hmm.
But you mentioned that prayer and meditation weren't a part of your world like it is today. At what
Hmm.
point did you really start moving into some of these practices?
Yeah. Good question. So I thought about this, and I really do think it was when I went into the DCI and had that space in peer coaching to have these conversations that it- I didn't even know I could have. So to be with a peer coach and um, start to explore what is God, what is God to me? How do I define that?
Hmm.
That was really where I begin to do that kind of deeper spiritual work, to have that, just to have that space to have those conversations.
Hmm. Well, I guess before diving into all that, because there's a lot of questions I have there, what got you into coaching to begin with?
Yeah. So, what got me into coaching was we'll fast forward a bit, but on maternity leave with my third child.
Sure.
And I was working in the fitness industry at the time. And I felt like I needed more letters behind my name going back to work. And so I started looking into other uh, like certificates and things. And I have a relative who was a life coach, and she said, "Have you thought about coaching?" And I hadn't, and that just kind of sent me on this trajectory. When I discovered that we don't give the answers and we don't give advice, and we believe that we have the answers within, that our client has the answers within. It was like a full circle moment to me of like those kind of like the moment with my professor, and this kind of like moment in church, or like these moments I've had throughout my life. And it's like, yes, that is true. Like that is really true. The answer has always been in me. And there's moments where I've had this reflected back. And um and so then I just was kind of lit up by that idea that we don't have to tell people what to do. Like myself included, coming from an industry, a fitness industry, where you're just bombarded by information. And, you know, did I take heed to all that information? No. And why didn't I? Right? Because there was something in me that was still like that. I'm reminded of that Rumi quote of, do not merely seek for love, but seek for all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And I like, that is coaching.
What made it difficult for you to embrace the light as a coach?
Yeah, it's that upper ceiling of our capacity to be with light, or our like that recognition of like, this is my upper ceiling of either joy or strengths, uh my skill set, my purpose, really, like on a deeper level. And so when I was shown that, there were times where I'm just like, oh, like the I guess we call it like fear of success, but like this resistance to really stepping into a purpose of why I'm here. And so, yeah, so when I was in my coaching program, I had this, it was like one of those moments where before the call, I'm like, if they ask if anyone wants to coach, I'm gonna do it. And then of course and I was like hoping they didn't. And then of course they did. And then I was like, shoot. And then I still held off. And it was like, the trainer was like, okay, like some of you might be like, it, like he was like saying what was in my head. I'm like, okay. And it was a really powerful session. And that he reflected that back to me. And I don't think I went back to class for maybe a year or maybe two. Like it was like, you know, a year and a half. Yeah. Like I think I had 3 years to finish the program, and I totally walked. It scared the hell out of me. And I was in a job that was not fulfilling me in any way, shape, or form. And I just hit this point where it's like, okay, like this is my ride or die moment. Like where do I want to go? And I made that decision to like actually stop working the job I was in and dedicate myself to finishing my program and moving forward.
What do you think it was about that session that had you take a step back?
Like it was that upper ceiling. Like I saw my light, right? So that um that I like I'm good at this. I'm good at
Mm.
something.
Mm.
And that scared the shit out of me. It really did. Right? And what does that mean? So I think like, we just like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean I'm gonna have to like whatever? Like we go in these funny places, our ego like takes us, like we have to sell everything. Am I gonna get a divorce? Am I gonna like no, like we go to these crazy places.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah. And isn't it funny? Like, don't you like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. The mind begins to try to anticipate the absolute worst case scenario because it's trying to keep us safe. But the scenarios that it concocts
right?
have no basis for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's trying to keep us safe in this, like, in the place that's not working.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you so you realized it was the pain and pressure of not being fulfilled, not being happy in the work that you were doing that had you say, I gotta go all in. I gotta do this coaching thing.
Yeah. 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 My husband said to me at one point, like, you need to quit or stop complaining. Like,
Come
like,
on. Well, I'm not gonna stop complaining, so let me quit. No.
right. It was this hard mirror
Yeah,
into like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing?
totally.
Yeah.
Want to have a partner that can see you in that way and also, hold you as you make that transition.
Yeah. 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 He was a trooper because it took a while. It took a while to kind of get my legs, you know, business wise, like under me. So he was a real trooper that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
What were some of so this is, any coach that's watching this might be going through a similar place where they're just getting started on their coaching journey or they're wanting to get into coaching as, their career. What were some of the things that you were trying that perhaps weren't working that you were just trying to figure out as you were making your way to becoming a full-time professional coach?
hmm So I was kind of like the kind of person that just threw spaghetti at the wall. Like any idea I had, I tried it. Like anything I arranged a speed coaching event with other coaches in my area. I like would do talks at like wellness fairs or the library or like I just kind of like had an idea and would run that workshop or do that thing. And so I was I was never short of like ideas, but I was short on time. So at that time, I still had 3 young children and I was a stay-at-home parent. And so there was a lot of like, um, I was hard on myself a lot of times for not being further along the path than I was. Also, kind of recognizing that I'm I'm parenting full time, and I have this like side hustle that I'm trying to grow. And in my head, I was like, I have this full time job that I'm growing, but I didn't have 40 hours a week to dedicate to that. A lot in retrospect, I think a lot of compassion and grace. I think more compassion and grace I could have afforded myself at that time. And the thing that I always tell coaches is that I never stopped. Like there was never a time where I'm like, you know what? Life is busy. I'm just going to put this coaching thing aside for now and I'll pick it up next year or I'll pick it up next month. Like I never did that.
Yeah.
So if it was one client, if it was one workshop, if it was one whatever, like I just, even if I had nothing, but I was like working towards something, it was like, is it James Clear that talks about casting votes for the person you want to be? And that really resonated with me because I do feel that I was always doing just something. And I never took a break. And, and so eventually those votes accumulated. And eventually I look and I'm like, oh, like I can contribute to our monthly income now. That's kind of cool. Right. So, yeah. So I feel like that's the biggest piece for me over time is that I was always casting a vote for this lifestyle that I wanted to create.
Yeah, tell me more about this lifestyle you wanted to create. What was that motivating factor for you that was having you show up every day and
Mm.
cast a vote?
So I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. Like that is also in my DNA. And so I've, I've even I had a business with my brother when I was a teenager. We won't get into that, but um, so I just always had it in my system. And I found like working in I was working in a government system when I was working in the fitness industry. It was a community complex and it was, there was just not enough autonomy in that. And I've already forgotten your question, but
What was
uh,
the motivating factor? What was your why that was pushing you forward?
yeah. So what was my why? So um, I being in service, like just that idea of being in service and this truth that we have the answers within us. And I just felt like if more people connect to that inner truth and that inner wisdom and that inner guide, this will be a completely different planet. Like, it's subversive to think that the answer is in us and not from some external thing that we can buy or that we can subscribe to, or even like a guru, like to think that the answer is outside of us. It's very subversive to kind of realize that the answer is within. And so again, I think it was just coming back to like, that's true. Like seeing the truth in that in my own experience was a real driver
Mm,
for that.
mm,
And this idea of like forward movement. So I've spent plenty of time in therapy and therapeutic modalities, and they've been incredibly helpful and supportive. And I do also remember going to a therapist at one point going, I'm kind of done. Like I could unpack all of this stuff with you, but I also just don't know if I need to. Like I was just at this point and I remember she said to me, have you thought about seeing a coach? Right? So this piece of like, yeah, just where do people want to go next? What is wanting to happen?
mm. Which transitions us perfectly into the work of the Deep Coaching Intensive
Mm.
in so many ways. What was it that drew you to the Deep Coaching Intensive? How did you find it? And yeah, tell me more about that experience.
Mm-hmm. So Leon was one of my trainers and um and there was something about the classes that he held within like kind of this like um developmental coach training course. There was something about his presence that I would find myself seeking out his classes. And one of our kind of last assignments, he was supporting me in a small group with that, and he had mentioned the center. And so I'm sure right after our call, I went and searched it up. I don't think we even had Google at that point. Like, we might have, I don't know. So anyway, but I'm sure I did an internet search on the center, and so as soon as I could, I enrolled in the DCI, and that was kind of like that. In the shift, a shift in being wasn't a book yet, and so each week, like these materials would unfold, which that essentially became the book. That just really deeply, deeply resonated with me, like the truth in it and the truth in my experience. And I was hooked.
What was it about it? Because again, you hadn't really dove in. I guess maybe you have with some of the books that you were reading.
Mm.
What was the message, the teaching that was compelling to you about it?
Um, where do I begin? So, um, so on the level of coaching, this idea of um, emergent space. So rather than like a model of a conversation that we work through to create space that of what wants to come in, right? So beyond myself as the coach or my client, the third, right? So whatever it is, the third is spirit, energy, divine intelligence. Like, can there be room for that to come in? So that spoke very deeply to me.
Mm.
And that feels fun and creative and energizing. And then of course the way Leon talks about the transformational journey itself. So I saw myself in those, um, I know this is Janet Hagberg's work, but I saw myself in those stages. I could clearly recognize in retrospect the power by association and the power by achievement. And again, like I said, feeling like I was so firmly rooted in power by reflection for such a long time. I was like, oh, that's so me. Like I've been seeking, 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 right? Through books, through whatever I could get my hands on. And so much of that made sense. And then also the feeling in me of that purpose and how we've talked about like these moments that I've been connected to that. And then not quite knowing how to bridge that gap.
Mm.
I was kind of moving into a power that's led by my purpose. I felt like that spoke to me and it normalized my experience and also gave me, I guess, some hope and some clarity that I am on the right path. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about this deepening in spirit and connecting to God during this time period.
Mm. So this has just been, again, my journey with nature, with through conversation, in coaching, and in therapy. And I would also say, like, this is where I began to seek out various forms of support. So I I found during this time that um, there would be like various helping professionals in various modalities that would kind of speak this language without knowing this work. So kind of either getting into like the non-duality of human nature, of life itself, like kind of starting to hear that kind of language, or um having like working with a acupuncturist or cranial sacral therapist who's like inviting me to connect to my heart and letting that speak. Like I started finding those people that began to hold space for me in that way. And there was a lot of healing that began to happen in that time for me. And I remember like having like these, I think they call them like healing crises. Like, like I would just get really sick. Like there's just something coming out and just exploring like that's that's a layer of grief that's actually moving through my body. Or and then also kind of beginning to find my way through to a meditative practice. And, even more recently, I've started exploring journaling. That's new for me. Um, yeah. And so just playing with these various, um, ways in.
Hmm.
And, but the big piece for me was being with someone, like being held in some type of way was really important to me.
As you did the exploring,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what
Like,
about that?
what about that?
Yeah, what about that for you was so supportive?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like the witnessing, maybe, like I hadn't really thought about this. It is a really good question. The witnessing, the like the co-regulation that happens in that space. I wouldn't have had the language for that then.
Sure.
Um, but like, yeah, like my list is long, like shamans, like cranial sacral therapists, acupuncturists, therapists, like, it goes Akashic records, like like I just went all over the place. And, and in that, it was like, it's funny. I feel like I'm drawing this parallel to one of those truths that I had as a child. It's just coming up for me now is like when I was again so confused about religion. Sorry, I'm just nonlinear. You mentioned of this conversation,
Please. Mm.
but I remember also like being so confused about like war that can be based in religion when at its fundamentals, all religions are, I felt, are they all saying the same thing? Like, love your brother? Like, I'm confused. And even within Christianity, like, I just felt like this doesn't make any sense. Like, we're all talking about the same guy. And yet there's so much like dissonance in between, like all of that. And um, so kind of coming back to this moment, like it was like I like different people were saying the same thing in different ways. And so that was really valuable to me to really help me like process my experience and deepen my healing and yeah, and just be held and have it said to me differently was really, really supportive.
Hmm. And how did the deep coaching work change the way that you were showing up in the world and in your own work?
Well, the it was I what I love about what I loved love and loved about the DCI was just this invitation into the practices. So to just it's a playful way for it was a playful way for me to like experiment, right? So I still remember a moment my kids were little and there was part of the course where we were exploring spiritual values. And so that week we just take time sitting with different spiritual values and really just kind of feeling the vibration of those in our being. And I remember I just kind of started playing with different words and which words have like more energy than others. And I was what I'm trying to think of the highest word and it starts with an E and I'm total middle age moment for me right on my brain.
Yeah.
Um And I remember just holding the energy of that
Mm.
above love. Um, and I remember I think I was asking one of my children to do something. And when I usually get met with resistance, and he just like got up and did it.
Mm.
And like, again, I've forgotten your question. Um, yeah, help.
Well, the you get so deep into speaking of this work that it's easy to get lost in the words themselves. I've
Yeah,
been, and all I was asking was, in what ways did deep coaching change the way you were showing up in your own practice and your own work?
yeah, yeah. So, um, and in my work, so that was kind of like an example in my life. And um, I still find I am exploring how the deep practices and deep coaching impacts my life. I'm still really much in a learning phase of that, I would say. I think you said, I think we were at the retreat, I think you'd mentioned like um that quote, Ram Dass, like
Yes.
when you think you're enlightened, go home. Yeah.
Go spend a week with your family.
Go spend a week with your family. So I I I chuckle with that often because I'm still very much in that and have seen some really powerful things lately in terms of me finding peace within myself, um, and unconditional love for others and forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so that has been and is an ongoing journey for me, just to be clear. Like I am by no means like on the other side of that.
Mm.
And in my work, like it's felt more easily accessible in my work. And so to be able to be in sacred space with someone and really trust, like really deeply trust either what's arising or that the the next question will reveal itself, right? Like I know a lot of coaches are like, like how do I know I'm going to ask the right question?
Mm.
So to just this allowing and unfolding of what is happening during a coaching session in the space in that. And like it's just so I like I started to have like coming from this lens of teaching, and I'm sure like I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts, but I this lens from teaching, when I started to wonder like what is happening.
Mm.
Like we know what's happening. Like you and I know what's happening. And I did get a curiosity on an intellectual level, like what is happening?
Yeah.
How are these practices so powerful
Mm.
in supporting someone and accessing both their wounds and the darkness and this incredible like light and
Mm.
knowing within them, like how are we what is happening? And I've had clients like going, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, and so on an intellectual level I got curious, and so I embarked a couple of years ago now on a year-long trauma informed training.
Mm.
And so what was so cool in that is that I felt like, I talked about co-regulation before. I didn't have that language really. Before that, I've heard of this, we hear these things kind of arising and in the world of coaching. And so to really like practice six, attuning to the client's deepest sense of self and letting that lead, like that is a trauma informed approach.
Yeah.
So when we can really attune ourselves and be with what is in the session from such a place of love and groundedness, that that's allowed to express itself. And even if the client is stuck, or like, can we just be with stuck?
Yeah.
That allows that to soften a little bit.
Completely.
Right. So that was really, it was fun. It was fun for me to go, oh, like scientifically, this is what's happening when we're practicing the practices.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool, like, journey to go on.
Mm. Mm. In deep coaching, we talk a lot about creating a healing container. You were just mentioning trauma-informed coaching. What does that relate? Because so often people hear words like healing and trauma and associate it with therapy and therapeutic sort of approaches.
Mhm.
What is it about trauma-informed coaching and deep coaching that allows for this in a way that it doesn't sort of cross that line where somebody might actually need some therapy?
Mhm. Well, it's funny because I often think of you when like someone asks me a question like this, because I feel like you've answered this really beautifully in terms of like, what is someone's level of resourcefulness in that moment?
Right.
Right. And so are they resourced enough to begin to access or explore whatever it is that's arising? Or is there a need for more resource in order to do that work?
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, it can be really difficult. Someone is like, I I don't want to say not coachable, but like if someone is not sleeping or not eating or like very much in the shock of something, are there is some co-regulation that can happen there. And I've had moments when clients come on a call and they're jarred by something, and I can just be with them and just just be with them and tend to myself and
Yes.
stay grounded and breathe. And then something happens where we can then begin to access, like, what do you need right now?
Mm.
And then sometimes it's like, I need to go. Like, today's not the day for a coaching session.
Yeah.
Or they're like, you know what? I need this coaching session. But there needs to be an attunement that happens to be able to have them, like, I do believe my client is incredibly resourceful, even when they're not resourced. Like, I think that's the other thing about trauma informed approach is that you realize that um, our, our physiological responses to trauma are incredibly wise.
Mm.
Right. So like, I'm thinking of Thomas Hubel. So he was one of the trainers. And so he says, like, we're here because we're here. Like, our nervous systems have developed over millennia to handle stress and trauma.
Yeah.
So when we begin to see that as like a wise teacher that's showing us something in this moment, then we can give space for that to begin to
Mm.
just soften. Right. And then maybe we can access a little bit more resourcefulness. So, so there's that, if someone is under resourced, how can we kind of hold space and support them to figure out what they need to become more resourced, and even know that that response of under resourced is resourceful
Mm.
because they are alive and they are here.
Right.
And so that's a very wise part of them, right? So it's helped me change my perspective on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when someone is resourced, then we can really begin to kind of access some deeper wisdom within them and some deeper knowing within them of what are those darker places and those shadowy bits that are really ready to emerge and be held and seen and inform, right? Like, really inform, as is that incredible power of light and heart how that is ready to inform and and just listening for those things and giving them space. Like that's just, it gives me tingles.
Gives me tingles too. Yeah, that space is the key factor here. The difference between someone relating to where they're at versus relating from where they're at. And even if somebody's under resourced and they're aware of that, that is space. They have space within themselves. And I think that's what you're alluding to.
Mhm.
I recognize I am under resourced and I'm not in a position to regulate on my own or figure this out on my own, and seeking out that support. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
You went from student to teacher, you can say, and that was perhaps a lead that was buried for some that might be watching this from the outside and are not aware that you are a learning leader in the Deep Coaching Intensive. What was that journey going from student to teacher like for you?
um Surprising. I remember being asked to teach the DCI and um being really surprised by that, like, am I worthy feeling.
Yeah.
Um and uh it's been really, I guess, again in retrospect, because now that I get this opportunity to look back, there was a lot of learning that I was doing in my own journey with, like, as I kind of move through each DCI cohort. And of course, like I said, like, of course, my learning is not complete. Like, this is a lifelong journey that I am on. And, um, and the, the beautiful thing about holding space in or being in the DCI with folks is that we get to just go on this learning journey again with them. And it's so beautiful to see, like, the insights and the how people kind of internalize this work themselves is always just an invitation for me to just move deeper into this work. And yeah, so what was that transition like? Like, it was, yeah, there was a lot of head in the beginning. Like, there was a lot of, like, I've got to, like, either say this like Leon does, or I have to, like, get this right. Like, there was a lot of that in the beginning. So that transition was interesting. And yeah, over the years, again, like, I've just really um it's just like, there's, I guess, this um letting go of a destination,
Hmm.
perhaps, right? That just, I'm still on my learning journey, they are on their learning journey, and we get to meet in this magical place where they get to we all get to share
Hmm.
our experience and our challenges and our successes and our insights and learning. um so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. It does in many ways. And you've answered it in other ways throughout today's
Mm,
conversation.
right.
The intersection of deep coaching, supervision, and creativity.
Mm,
Tell me more about that.
yeah. Yeah, and I almost feel like it's like I feel at a loss of words
Hmm.
when it comes to that.
Hmm.
And and so this is where, like, one, it speaks to deep coaching,
Yeah.
because in deep coaching, we're really inviting this experience of the I am at the core of our being. So it's we are coaching, we are using words, like, there is all of that, but it is an experience, and the expansiveness of that. And so that's like, so it there's more of a feeling here in the terms of in the intersection between supervision deep coaching and creativity. It's more of a feeling I have of expansion
Mm.
to articulate in words. And so my kind of various ways in with bringing creative elements into workshops and into coaching and supervision, I've found my bestie, Nicole Lebian, doesn't have a website, so I don't know, she doesn't. Anyway, so I'm giving her some kudos here too. Um, she is an art therapist, and she has been an incredible partner in crime with me in terms of like we'd started running workshops together, and she would bring a creative art prompt, and I would bring content. And so I would speak to some content, and then together we'd come up with an art prompt that would like take us into an exploration. And we would always do the art prompt together first. So we have this experience of something before we bring it to a group. And she's so chill. Like she's just like, and I'm just like, I'm not doing this right. It doesn't look how I want it to look. And it's like, she's like, just keep going. Just keep going. And so like through the process of making something, and this is by no means like draw a picture of your dog. Like this is not like a science or like a painting. Like these are very
Right.
low skill, high impact, creative activities. And so I would kind of, okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And by the end, I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. Like, I kind of like this. And then you make meaning of what you've created, which there's so much power in that. And so that the activity alone gets us out of our heads, right? So practice 5 of coaching and being less from the head and more from the heart. There's this intersection of creative exploration that allows us to bypass the head and create something and make meaning of it depending on what we're exploring that can speak to us in really profound ways. And so having this experience of that and then kind of moving into the training of supervision, which I think is a horrible name. I like super dash vision versus vision. That's really what it is, right? So it's like it's going into the space of expansiveness and looking at the systems that the coach is living and their clients are living and working in. And having this, like, it's far more, like I'm thinking of practice 6 and this attunement of what wants to happen and creating and exploring this emergent space for wisdom to arise between like the supervisor, the supervisee, and the client to kind of inform their practice, to inform them of the work they're doing with their clients so they can be more resourceful and more intuitive and more trusting and all of those beautiful things. And so I like to bring creative exploration into supervision, and I'm playing with it a little bit more in deep coaching as of recently. And yeah, it's just a really fun, like, space of like not knowing and all knowing. And just to really kind of, get into all of that.
Yeah. For somebody who might be listening to this and not be so sure of what supervised coaching is, because they may not be on that track, how would you define supervision?
So I would define supervision as a reflective practice that allows you to take a look at your work. So it's not the skill of coaching, but like who you are, right? Who you are is how you coach. And so when you can begin to look at that, but I also feel like you're also in supervision, you're honoring the client, even though they're not in that space of supervision, they very much are energetically. So to be able to honor the client and then also honor the relationship between the supervisor and the supervisee. Like it's the layers of these systems that we really get to look at
Mm.
and parallel process how that shows up in our relationships with our clients. Like, yeah, I'm getting longer and longer with my answer, so I'll stop. But it's a place of reflective practice, which I always refer to as normative, restorative, and educative.
Mm.
So we need a place to normalize our experiences as coaches. We need a place to resource and restore ourselves. And we need a place to learn.
Isn't that true of all of life?
Yeah, totally. Right? Oh, there's, yeah,
Intersection,
exactly.
like you
Good
said.
point.
Yeah.
Right? That's again, an intersection with deep coaching. Like we need a place for that. And even that creative piece, like as I would walk through those things of like, I don't like this. It's like, okay, I see the value in this now. Like this is my life, right? And it's like you get in the messy middle and you just have to keep going. And then after you like make meaning of it and it's quite powerful and profound, it's like, all right, so I just did that in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was a parallel to my life right now. Okay, I get it.
Well, I mean, that's another example of going from student to, let's call it, facilitator, because 3 months ago during our retreat in Florida, you guided us through a little art experience that was exactly what you're just sharing right now. It was not about precision. It was about going out in nature, finding the objects that most called to us, that resonated with us, bringing it back to our space and creating something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's nothing about perfection. There's nothing about right and wrong. It was just what comes up and what does it emote in you, as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite activities that we did. And I still will utilize that one myself.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling stuck. And it's, yeah. And the other thing I love about that particular activity, and just for folks that were listening, like, yeah, we're gathering objects and putting them in an installation and then writing about it and reflecting on that. And there's an impermanence to that too, right? So everything went back.
Yeah.
And so I'll lean into that one time and time again in different contexts for sure.
Yeah. And also it was amazing seeing everybody's personality come through, because there were aspects of people's personality that showed up, in what they created. Some people were more precise and structured. Other people were sort of crazy and fun. It was really a beautiful, beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
30 something people creating different installations.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we begin wrapping up this space, if you could leave listeners with an invitation or something to reflect on or practice in their own transformational journeys, what might that be?
So I'm going to say this because this is what's alive in me right now is what does forgiveness mean to you? And what is an invitation to step further into that in your life right now?
Such a perfect invitation. Thank you so much, Cate.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.